To Ayasab, what is the Muslim view on evolution?
Well, there's different views, of course, because this question is literally as large as life. And the Muslims, a certain group of Muslims, they believe that God created a figure of clay, which was to be Adam, and breathed into it, and then that was the beginning of life. Then there's the Darwinian concept of evolution. But what we find from the Holy Quran, which has been taught to us through that beautiful renaissance, as you mentioned, from the promised Messiah alayhi salam, and then his rightly guided khulafa, is that the Holy Quran presents different stages of evolution. In one verse of the Holy Quran, it is written that وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ, that everything was created from water. Then at another instance, Allah the Almighty says, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ كَالْفَخَّارِ, that Allah created man from dry clay, like pieces of pottery. Then there is yet another verse which speaks of حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونَ, that there was a period where man was created from mud, blackish mud, which had a particular smell to it, which wasn't so pleasant. So these are not contradictions in the Holy Quran. As I mentioned, these are different stages of the evolutionary process. Hazur Rabi Rahimullah Ta'ala, the fourth Khalifa, may Allah be pleased with him, he used to say very beautifully, he said that when this concept of evolution was studied by scientists, they were faced with a problem. And that problem was that how did all of the inorganic chemicals which were present in the universe transfer themselves into organic chemicals? And the inorganic chemicals are hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. And when they started doing tests in the laboratory, they realized that they created a setting of these inorganic chemicals, and they struck it with electricity, and they saw that it would develop to some extent, these chemicals. But whenever these chemicals would touch water, they would become reversed and revert to their original state. So this was the problem, that how did life progress then? So the answer is in this verse of the Holy Quran, that Hazur Rabi Rahimullah Ta'ala, the fourth Khalifa, he used to say, and he has written at length in his book, Revelation, Rationality, Knowledge and Truth. He said that these inorganic chemicals which were present in water, which could not progress any further because of the presence of water, when they were put onto rocks which had an ample level of silicone, and then this silicone and this muddy material, which is referred to here as حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونَ, when that muddy material or substance was dried up by the sun, it became صَلْصَالٍ كَالْفَخَّارِ, it became like ringing clay, like pottery. And then when that mud dried up and became like this, and when this dry mud or this dust was taken back, when the water reclaimed it, then because of the presence of silicone which was there already in the rocks, that evolutionary process started further and further. And that's how we believe for the evolutionary process to have begun. We don't believe in the Darwinian theory of evolution. We believe that evolution progressed, but every species, because of the wonderful hand of Allah the Almighty, had its separate chain which it progressed through. And this is the meaning of Rabb. The very first surah of the Holy Quran refers to the concept of evolution. That Rabb, what is the meaning of Rabb? Rabb in Arabic means somebody who causes evolutionary growth, step by step by step. So this right away rules out the concept of having a figure of clay and then Allah breathing into. We believe in that evolutionary process, but a controlled evolutionary process which was watched by the wonderful and powerful omnipotent hand of God. And the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam has presented a very logical and a very wonderful argument. He says that the proof of the fact that Allah was the one who controlled this evolutionary process is that if this was a haphazard system of evolution which happened randomly from one chain and then broke off to different chains, then we should still see that evolutionary process continue. But we see that Allah brought it to a level and then stopped the evolutionary process. We don't continue to grow ears and noses and eyes. And the promised Messiah ﷺ has mentioned this, that man, or evolution for that matter, naturally wishes to move towards progression. So we should have developed more faculties, more ears, and maybe two noses and more tongues to enjoy our food so much better. But we don't see that, which proves that there was that hand of God behind this evolutionary process.
Jazakallah, Ya Sab, which brings me quite nicely to Farhan Saab's second question. Again, he said, what is the Ahmadiyya view? What is the Islamic view on the story of creation? And he says that is, of course, that Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, Allah be pleased with him, was the first human being. Hazrat Sahib, was Adam the first man?
The earlier discussion about Hazrat Isa alayhi salam has an interesting link to this question, because the Christians claim that Jesus is a God because he had no father. And the Quran says the case of Isa alayhi salam is just like Adam alayhi salam, where if you say Jesus is God because he had no father, imagine what you're saying about Adam, who had neither father nor mother. So this is an argument that if Jesus is God, then Adam alayhi salam must be doubly potent as a God. So we reject that concept right from this issue of whether Adam was the first man or what kind of man he was. In this also is the argument that if you look at the Bible and the Quran, this is only a hypothetical argument. It's kind of like a dialectic argument. It's not the real argument of Quran. Quran is not saying in this statement, and I just want to clarify that Adam was the first man that we are talking about in the Quran here. Because this is part of the assumption where this is coming from. They're looking at it and say, yes, see, Jesus is like Adam. Adam had no father, no mother. He was the first man. Quran is not using that as a literal argument. It's using it as a reason. If you Christians believe that this Jesus Christ was so special because he didn't have a father, then you should give twice as much credence to Adam, who you believe had no mother and father, who you believe had no mother and father. We don't believe that, but you believe that. So according to your own belief system, is wrong. So if a Muslim believes that, he's actually adopting the belief of Christians, not of Muslims. Because the Bible, if you read it clearly, and the Quran, once you look at it later on, both are saying Adam and Eve were not alone. Even in the garden that they believed to be the garden of that time,
There were other people.
there were other people. There had to be other people. Because you always ask the Christian, when the son of Adam committed the atrocious act of murdering his own brother, Cain murders Abel, God says, I'll put a mark on Cain so that anyone who sees him will not attack him. Who's going to see him? Mother and father, if they're the only ones left. And they're not going to attack. They'll be pretty angry, of course, but they're not going to kill their son, you know. So there had to be someone else, because he was to go forth in the land. And wherever he said, I will go, people will, then they will ostracize me, they'll attack me. Someone had to be there. And when finally he goes forth in the land, to the land of Nod, he marries some woman and he starts his own family. Who was that girl? Where did she come from? Was this his own sister from Adam and Eve that somehow was cast off into Nod, and finally later on he marries her? The whole scenario speaks to the fact that there were other people living in that time according to the history of Adam. And the Holy Quran, when you read it later on, as is revealed later on by Prophet Muhammad, to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, again you see right in Surah Al-Baqarah, the first verses of the Quran speak about the story of Adam and Eve. And what does it say? When Adam, somehow there's a division in his community by the attack of Iblis, Satan. God tells him, "Ihbitu minha, ba'dukum li ba'adin aduw." You now have to leave. Because ba'adukum, some of you, qum is plural. It doesn't say ba'dukuma, that you two, your husband and wife are now fighting each other. Qum is a plural pronoun in Arabic. Ba'dukum li ba'adin adu. Some of you are enemies to others. And the plural ihbitu is also plural. That now you, Adam, must get out. It doesn't say ihbita, that you and your wife should get out. I know this is a very kind of a technical point from Arabic grammar, but even reading it says you should get out, and then later on it says ihbitu jamia, all of you go out. Who is this jamia? Ask any Arabic, can two be jamia? This jamia means a plural, so it means all of you should go out, and thus the Bible and the Quran are settled on a point that there were other people in existence at the time of Adam. And these are not just people who were his own progeny, his own children. These are other people who are individuals around with separate identities. And we believe that Adam was therefore not the first man mentioned in Quran, but the first man of God mentioned, the first one who received revelation, received laws, received a code for creating society. And this was his great distinction. However, there is the aspect that every human being, and as he mentioned, the evolution of human beings, every human being that reached a stage of development was also called Adam. Every time man went to this quantum leap of a new form, a new development, that too was called Adam. And I think this also creates confusion amongst the Muslims. That the word is used and it's shifted sometimes in a general sense and sometimes in a specific sense. But at least if his question is about specifically the Adam of the Bible and the Quran, we say that Adam was a prophet of God. If it's about Adam as man in general, then this is the Adam that Ayaz Sahib has talked about beautifully. That Adam has been developing for millions and billions of years from a single cell up to what it is now. And the clear example of that is, you think is so impossible, we've been told by the Quran, look at yourself. You are still a microcosm of the universe and how it developed. Because you began as a single cell or drop, two fluids mixed together, and this phenomenal growth took place, which will boggle your mind if you just sit back and think about that.
On that
What
single
we were.